Some stories don't end, they just stop abruptly, leaving us suspended in disbelief. They halt mid-sentence, leaving behind a vacuum of whispers and shadows, a void where truth struggles to surface. The story of Jeffrey Epstein is one such tale, a narrative cut short, leaving more questions than answers. It's a labyrinth of unimaginable wealth, a world of excess and privilege, power, influence, and connections that stretch to the highest levels. And at its core, horrific crimes, unspeakable acts that demand justice. Epstein moved through the highest echelons of society with unnerving ease, his influence seemingly bending the rules of justice to his will. He cultivated relationships with the elite, weaving a web of protection around himself. Even in death, the full extent of his secrets remains buried, protecting the powerful and continuing to haunt his victims, their lives forever scarred. The official narrative, the one presented to the public, is deceptively simple. A disgraced financier facing the consequences of his heinous crimes, sex trafficking of minors, took his own life while in a federal jail cell, seemingly bringing the story to a close. But for those who look closer, for those willing to question the surface, this felt less like a definitive ending and more like a hastily drawn curtain, concealing a much darker truth. How could a man with so many damning secrets, secrets that implicated so many others, simply vanish from the world? His death was not a resolution that brought closure. It was a complication, a tangled thread in an already complex web. This is not just about one man's depravity, as shocking as it was, but about the institutions that enabled him, the systems that allowed him to operate with impunity. Prosecutors looked away, choosing to ignore the obvious red flags. Lawyers crafted secret deals, shielding him from the full weight of the law. And powerful friends gave him legitimacy, lending their reputations to his cause and solidifying his position. The real mystery isn't just what he did, the acts he committed, but how he was allowed to do it for so long, how the system failed to stop him. Survivors now carry the burden of a story half told, their voices struggling to be heard above the din of speculation and cover-ups. All the while, the public tries to piece together a conspiracy that feels too vast, too intricate, too deeply entrenched to be mere fiction. This is a deep dive into the darkness Epstein left behind, a chilling reminder that some ghosts never rest and some secrets refuse to stay buried. Jeffrey Epstein's story is one of an improbable ascent, a journey that defies conventional logic. It begins not in a high-powered boardroom but in the seemingly ordinary halls of the Dalton School. He started as a teacher there, remarkably, without even a college degree. A detail that foreshadows his future ability to bypass traditional routes to power and influence. His undeniable charisma, a key ingredient in his ascent, connected him to the wealthy and powerful. This included Alan Ace Greenberg, the then CEO of Bear Stearns, a Wall Street titan who against all odds, gave Epstein his first crucial break on Wall Street. Epstein's rise within Bear Stearns was meteoric, almost unbelievable, and shrouded in mystery. He navigated the complex world of high finance with an uncanny ease, and quickly became a partner at Bear Stearns. But his time there was short-lived. He then left Bear Stearns somewhat abruptly, under a cloud of rumors and whispers that hinted at something amiss. Undeterred, he founded J. Epstein and Company, a venture that added another layer to his enigmatic persona. He claimed to manage money only for billionaires, further shrouding his growing fortune and business dealings in secrecy and exclusivity. His primary, and perhaps most significant known client, was Leslie Wexner, the retail magnate behind Limited Brands. Wexner, seemingly captivated by Epstein's charm and purported financial acumen, gave Epstein sweeping control over a significant portion of his vast fortune. This was a trust Wexner would later come to deeply regret, as the relationship and its implications became increasingly scrutinized. The true source of Epstein's wealth, the wellspring from which his empire flowed, remains one of the saga's most central and enduring enigmas. He meticulously cultivated an image as a financial genius, a master of investment and wealth creation. However, there's surprisingly little public evidence to support these claims of his supposed investment prowess. The money flowed freely, an endless stream fueling his lavish lifestyle and nefarious activities, but its origins were deliberately opaque, a river of cash with no easily traceable or legitimate source. This deliberate ambiguity, this carefully constructed veil of secrecy, was arguably his greatest asset. It allowed him to build a world where he was the sole gatekeeper, controlling access and manipulating situations to his advantage. Epstein wasn't just managing money, he was meticulously crafting a persona, the self-made billionaire, the well-connected confidant, the friend of princes and presidents, a man who seemingly had it all. But beneath the glittering facade of wealth and influence, his wealth funded a global network of abuse, a dark underbelly hidden from public view. The jets, symbols of his boundless reach, the mansions, opulent displays of his power, the island, all were meticulously chosen settings, stages for his horrific crimes, far removed from the eyes of justice. The money was never the ultimate end goal, it was always the means to an even more sinister end. And it bought him something even more valuable: protection from accountability, for a time. Epstein didn't just collect money, he collected people. His social circle included presidents, princes, and prime ministers, providing him with a shield of legitimacy. His properties were stages for this theater of influence: a Manhattan mansion, Zorro Ranch, and most infamously, Little St. James, Pedophile Island. These locations were more than homes, they were instruments of control, isolating both powerful guests and vulnerable victims. The Lolita Express, his private jet, ferried the elite between his properties, creating a secret world above the law. For the powerful, it was a perk. For the girls, it was a nightmare. This web of connections wasn't just for social climbing, it was integral to his criminal enterprise. The presence of powerful men normalized the exploitation and silenced dissent. Each famous face added to his credibility, making it harder for victims to be believed. Epstein was a predator hiding in plain sight, protected by those society admired. His power came from their proximity, their silence was his shield. The spotlight didn't expose him, it hid him. And the world watched, complicit. For years, the stories were whispers, rumors that circulated in hushed tones among the elite. Teenage girls in Palm Beach lured by promises of modeling careers and extravagant gifts, then abused and paid for silence, their innocence stolen in the shadows of opulent wealth. The pattern was chilling: girls recruited with calculated precision, assaulted with impunity, and coerced into recruiting others, perpetuating a cycle of abuse and exploitation. Survivors like Courtney Wild and Virginia Giuffre, armed with courage and a burning desire for justice, forced the system to act, their voices rising above the din of indifference. This led to a major police investigation, a deep dive into the dark underbelly of Palm Beach society, uncovering a web of deceit and corruption. The evidence pointed to a federal sex trafficking case, a clear violation of human rights, but justice, tantalizingly close, ultimately slipped away through a backdoor deal. In 2008, federal prosecutors, led by Alexander Acosta, then the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, made a decision that would forever alter the course of justice. They struck a secret non-prosecution deal, a controversial agreement shrouded in secrecy and lacking transparency. Epstein pleaded guilty to minor charges, a slap on the wrist for heinous crimes, and served just 13 months with work release, a privilege that seemed to mock the severity of his offenses. He also received immunity for himself and unnamed co-conspirators, shielding them from potential prosecution and perpetuating the cycle of impunity. The deal was negotiated in secret, behind closed doors, violating victims' rights and denying them the opportunity to confront their abuser. This effectively shut down the federal investigation, burying the truth and silencing the voices of the victims. Epstein walked free, his power and influence seemingly untouched, while survivors were left with the deep scars of trauma and the bitter taste of betrayal. The justice system, designed to protect the vulnerable, had instead protected a predator, prioritizing his interests over the well-being of the children he harmed. For over a decade, this deal effectively silenced the case, allowing Epstein to continue his predatory behavior with impunity. The survivors' bravery in coming forward was met with a symphony of silence and inaction from those sworn to uphold the law and protect the innocent. The system failed them, again and again, leaving them feeling abandoned and forgotten. The truth was buried deep, but it was not forgotten. The fight for justice, though long and arduous, was just beginning, fueled by the unwavering determination of the survivors. For years, Epstein seemed untouchable, shielded by the 2008 plea deal. But survivors and journalists, especially the Miami Herald, kept the story alive, sparking public outrage. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport, charged with sex trafficking minors. Denied bail, he was sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. It seemed a reckoning was at hand, until the narrative took a dark turn. Weeks later, Epstein was found semi-conscious in his cell, placed on suicide watch, then inexplicably removed from it. Security protocols were ignored, his cellmate was transferred, guards failed to check on him, and records were falsified. For hours, no one checked on the most high-profile inmate in America. The man who could have named names was left unsupervised in his final hours. Once again, the system failed, this time with finality. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead officially, suicide by hanging. But the circumstances were so bizarre, so convenient for the powerful, that skepticism exploded. Guards admitted to sleeping and falsifying records, surveillance footage was lost or deleted. Epstein's lawyers were shocked. A pathologist suggested his injuries were more consistent with strangulation. The very evidence that could have provided answers vanished. Epstein's death closed his criminal case but opened a larger one in the court of public opinion. #Epstein didn't kill himself became a viral symbol of distrust. For many, his death was the ultimate proof of conspiracy. The questions remain, hanging in the air, unanswered. With Epstein gone, the search for truth moved online. Amateur sleuths and journalists scoured flight logs, court documents, and photos, fueling a global, decentralized investigation. The infamous Lolita Express logs became a central focus, each name a potential lead. The public demanded the release of unredacted logs, believing they held the key to the wider network. The secrecy only fueled suspicion, symbolizing the establishment's efforts to protect its own. The 2008 plea deal and Epstein's suspicious death confirmed fears of a two-tiered justice system. The movement for transparency became a defining feature of the post-Epstein era. The demand was simple: release the names and let the truth be known. With Epstein dead, attention turned to his chief accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. Arrested in 2020, her trial finally gave survivors a chance to testify in court. They described Maxwell as an active participant, recruiting, grooming, and trafficking girls for Epstein. The defense painted her as a scapegoat, but the survivors' stories were consistent and powerful. In December 2021, Maxwell was convicted on 5 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor, and sentenced to 20 years. For survivors, it was a moment of justice, though incomplete. Maxwell, like Epstein, remained silent about the powerful men in their circle. Her conviction closed one chapter, but left the wider network untouched. The doors to the full truth remain ajar. The Epstein saga remains unfinished, a ledger of debts unpaid and questions unanswered. Who were the other co-conspirators? Who were the powerful clients and friends who enabled or participated in the abuse? Legal battles continue to unseal documents and expose the so-called John Does. Each redacted name is a missing piece in a global conspiracy. The case is a brutal lesson in institutional failure. At every level, the system protected the powerful. The search for truth is a moral imperative owed to the survivors who brought this darkness to light. As long as the client lists and flight logs remain secret, there can be no closure. The ghosts of this story will not rest until every name is brought into the light.